Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Thank you, all of you, for coming here. Thank you for the very kind invitation. It's lovely to be here in Berlin and wonderful to be able to speak to so many people who are interested in the power of nutrition. Diabetes is really the epidemic that we are facing now, not only in the Western countries, but more and more in what are often referred to as developing countries. In China and much of Asia, we are seeing diabetes exploding. And I'm sorry to say that you don't have to look that far in order to see these kinds of difficulties. Here's the bad news. If you can identify Germany on this slide, this is the prevalence of diabetes in adults. We're not doing quite as well as we might like. And luckily, there are reasons for that, and those reasons are under our control. But here's the bad news. If you look at the middle line, when we look at adults in Germany, we see almost 11% of adults have this disease now, and it's continuing to go up. So 6.5 million adults have it now. That's 11% of the population. But when we talk with people about diabetes, what they very often say is, well, I'm working on my diet. I'm trying to avoid bread. What they mean is, diabetes means there's too much sugar in the blood. That sugar is glucose. And sugar will come from starchy foods like bread. When you digest it, the glucose molecules go into the bloodstream, and if you have diabetes, there's too much glucose. So the answer is don't eat bread, and don't eat potatoes, and don't eat beans, and don't eat cookies, and don't eat cakes, and don't eat pasta, and don't eat rice. But when you look at, say, Japan, in Japan we have the healthiest, longest-lived people on the planet. And what is the main food that people eat in Japan? Rice, huge amounts of rice. For breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, lots and lots of rice. But if you look at diabetes in Japan, in adults over the age of 40, before 1980, diabetes was rare. It was 1 to 4% of the population. Compare that to almost 11% here in Germany. Between 1 and 4% of the population had diabetes. But what happened in Japan right around 1980, culturally, food-wise? What happened? Does anyone know? McDonald's arrived. McDonald's arrived. And these are not traditional Japanese foods, but they became very popular. And the fat content of the Japanese diet went up, 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 and the carbohydrate content started to fall. In other words, they are eating less rice than before, and by 1990, diabetes was 11 to 12%. This shows us two things. First, rice does not cause diabetes. Number two, diabetes is not primarily a genetic disease. Now that may surprise you, because we do see diabetes in families, from the grandfather to the mother to the children. But we don't just give our children DNA, we also give them recipes. So sometimes what looks like a genetic condition can simply be tastes for foods. And genetics did not change in that 10-year period. What changed was the diet. So we can take a lesson from the United States. In the United States, we don't have a rice-based diet. We have a meat-based diet. Every meal has to have meat in the middle of it. And back in 1909, our US government identified that the average American was eating 123.9 pounds of meat per person per year. And then in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, it started to go up. And in fact, the big increase, by the way, was not beef. Anybody know what we were eating? Chicken. Americans eat 1 million chickens per hour. It's got to be healthy food. I should be eating more chicken. We are in the worst shape we have ever been in. Let me say a special word of condemnation for cheese. Americans didn't eat cheese. Back in 1909, we thought, well, cheese, that's European. We don't eat cheese in America. However, 2 things happened. The first is fast food chains like Burger King and McDonald's put cheese on all the burgers. And second, pizza. Pizza arrived, and Americans used pizza as an excuse to eat lots and lots and lots of cheese. Now, by 2013, we were at 33 pounds of cheese per person, average, and I'm not eating any, so somebody else must be getting about 60 pounds. The reason that matters is that cheese is 70% fat, 70% fat, mostly saturated fat. That's bad fat. If it were any worse, it would be petroleum. People are eating huge amounts of this fatty, gloppy, high cholesterol food. Now, if you look at the diabetes map, this is the United States. Here in the northern part in 1994, there was not a lot of diabetes. And here in the southern states, there was more than 6%. But as the diet was changing, meat was going up, cheese was going up. Here's 1995 and 96 and 97 and 98, 99, 2000. Diabetes doesn't wait. It just comes right in. And now I'm going to change the colors to look at specific cities and counties, but the map continues to get worse. We're seeing this in just about every country. As the diet changes, diabetes comes right in. It doesn't wait. It's very, very rapid. So who does better? Researchers have studied Seventh-day Adventists. And when I began my research career, I couldn't figure out, why do researchers want to study this religious group? And of course, the reason is that people who follow the Seventh-day Adventist religion don't smoke, they avoid alcohol, they don't drink much coffee, and they are supposed to follow a vegetarian diet. But some do follow the vegetarian diet, others do not follow a vegetarian diet, and that sets up a perfect natural experiment of health-conscious, non-smoking people who follow different diet patterns. In 2009, the American Diabetes Association published these data. They looked at body mass index. Are you familiar with the body mass index? It's your weight, but it's adjusted for how tall you are. And a healthy body mass index is below 25. So we have almost 61,000 people in this study, and they're divided into 5 groups depending on their diet. So on the left, that red line, those are meat eaters, non-vegetarians. And as you can see, their body mass index is not below 25. It's 28.8. Average meat eaters typically are overweight. The second group, they're called semi-vegetarians. And what that means is they eat meat but less than once a week. And they're a little bit thinner. And the third group, pesco-vegetarian. What is that? Pesco? Okay, fish, but no other meat, only fish. A little bit thinner, but not a lot. And this group, lacto-ovo-vegetarian. Lacto meaning milk. Ovo means eggs, so they might have milk and eggs, but no meat, no fish. They're a little bit thinner. But who is this group? I have to tell my patients that a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. A vegan means you don't eat any animal products, no meat, no milk, no fish, nothing, none of that. And they are the only group who, on their average, is in the healthy weight range. But this is not why the American Diabetes Association published these data. They did it because of diabetes, and when you look at diabetes, the meat eaters have a lot of it, the vegans have almost none, and the more you get the animal products out of your diet, the better you do. So my research team said, let's try this. In people who never thought about doing a vegan diet before, we brought in 64 women. They were all moderately to severely overweight. And they had done every diet you can imagine. And we said, stop that. No, we have just 2 rules. The first rule is no animal products. No meat, no dairy, no eggs. Second rule, keep oils to a minimum. So many people take that olive oil bottle and go glug, 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 all over the salad, all over the pasta. No, we're not doing that. But those were the only rules. They could eat as much as they wanted. There was no limit on calories, no limit on carbohydrate, no limit on portion size of food. We asked them not to change their exercise patterns, and it was a 14-week study. And when people came in, we said, this is what we want you to use as your diagram. Eat from the power plate: fruits, grains, vegetables, and legumes. Legumes are beans or lentils or peas. And so what that really means, if I'm thinking in terms of actual meals, well, it might mean a breakfast of blueberry pancakes or oatmeal porridge or a cantaloupe or toast. Or if I have linguine with artichoke hearts, seared oyster mushrooms, fine. By the way, these are not oysters, those are mushrooms. But no meat sauce, no cheese sauce, no Alfredo sauce, none of that. At 14 weeks, the average person had lost 13 pounds, that's good, and 2 inches off their waistline. Their insulin sensitivity was improved, which we measure with something called glucose tolerance testing. And we tracked them for 1 year, and they were thinner at 1 year than at the beginning. And we then tracked them at 2 years, and they were thinner at 2 years than at 1 year, meaning unlike every other diet they had followed, where the weight goes down and then it goes back up, in this case, it was a one-way street. They lost weight and kept it off, which makes sense, because if you follow a calorie-counting diet and you're hungry, by about Wednesday, you're ready to eat the refrigerator. It's too difficult. But if I simply say, put something different on your spaghetti, that's not hard to do. And you're never hungry, so you have no reason to ever stop it. Very easy. Okay, so wait a minute. I just said you could eat all the pancakes you want to, and you're going to lose weight? How can that be? Well, the first thing is fiber. Fiber is in every plant food in nature, and it leads to satiety, meaning it makes you feel full. It makes you feel satisfied. It tells the brain, I've had enough food. And so all of these foods, beans, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, they all have lots and lots of fiber in them. However, sausage is not a plant. So it has no fiber at all. And every calorie in sausage or in chicken or in cheese or in milk goes into your body, undiluted, and that's why people tend to gain weight. All right, so the second thing, and this will not be on the test, but I want to share with you anyway, something called the thermic effect of food. I call it also the after-meal burn. Here's what happens. Patients come into our study, and they say, oh, Dr. Barnard, something's wrong with my metabolism. I can't burn calories anymore. When I was 16 years old, I could eat anything, and I wouldn't gain any weight at all. But now I just look at food, and I gain weight. I don't know, my metabolism must be very slow. And you know what? It's true. Their metabolism is slow, and I can measure it. They come into my laboratory. They lie down on a table, and I measure with a special device on their face. I measure the oxygen they're taking in and the carbon dioxide that they are breathing out. And that will tell me how fast they are burning calories. And it's very slow. And at that point, I give them breakfast. And once they have breakfast, they are absorbing the nutrients in that food, and their metabolism goes up, 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 and it stays higher than normal for about 3 hours, or maybe longer, maybe 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. That happens every time you eat. However, now we are going to start a vegan diet. No animal products at all, keep the oils low. And come back in, and then what I discover is you lie on the same table, and I will feed you the same breakfast. But what I find is that your metabolism is faster than before. It's higher. You're burning calories about 16% faster than before. That's not a lot. But if you burn calories for 16% faster after breakfast and after lunch and after dinner 7 days a week, you're going to be thinner than the person who didn't think about trying out your diet. Okay? So why does that happen? Wait a minute. A vegan diet makes me burn calories faster? Here's what happens. This is a muscle cell. I take a needle, put it in my arm, pull out one muscle cell. And the reason we're talking about muscles, you've heard people say that your muscles burn calories. You don't want to lose your muscles. That's what burns calories. That's true. This is a muscle cell, and inside it, there are mitochondria. You remember the mitochondria. Those are burners. They turn food into energy. And you have a lot of them. But you have something else. You have fat. Fat inside the cell. Now, scientists don't like a word like fat. It's only got 3 letters. So we call it intramyocellular lipid, but it's fat inside the cell is what it is. And if I'm eating chicken fat, or beef fat, or fryer grease, or olive oil, or extra virgin olive oil, or extra virgin olive oil, or any kind of fat, here's what happens. It comes into my cells. It builds up this is not belly fat. This is not fat on my thighs. It's fat inside the muscle cells. And the only way to see it is with a special scanning device called MR spectroscopy. A person can be quite thin, but if they have fat building up in the cell, we can see it. All right? So what happens? When I have fat building up in my cells, the cell reacts to it. It says, hooray, this is good. I want fat, because if there's suddenly a time of famine, if there's no food around, if I have fat inside my cell, I will survive. And so your cells are programmed to keep that fat inside the cell and not to let it go. And if you have all of these mitochondria burning up the fat, then you're losing it. So what does your cell do? When the fat comes into the cell and the cell knows it's there, it reduces its production of mitochondria to save the fat. And that means your metabolism is going to slow down and you're going to have trouble burning off fat. So fat in cells slows down your after-meal burn. Are you with me? So if I'm on a vegan diet, how much animal fat is in my diet? None. 0. And if I keep the vegetable oils low, then this fat starts to dissipate. It starts to go away. And as that fat goes away, then my after-meal burn comes back. So why are people following a vegan diet? Why do they get thin? Even if they are not counting calories, even if they don't exercise, why do they tend to be thinner? Because number one, the fiber satisfies their appetite. And number two, they have a better metabolism. Not a lot, just a little bit, but that's all it takes to be slim. Okay. So the National Institutes of Health of the US government then in 2003 asked us to do a research study, a similar study, but in people who had type 2 diabetes. And what we did was we tested a vegan diet versus what we call ADA guidelines. That's the American Diabetes Association. And what that means is lower your calories, don't eat too much carbohydrate, a more traditional diabetes diet. And what we track when people have diabetes is something called hemoglobin A1C. And hemoglobin A1C is just a way of measuring your glucose control. If I measure blood glucose directly, it varies during the day. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. But hemoglobin A1C stays more stable. It reflects blood glucose control for a period of about 3 months. And it should be below 7. And our patients were not below 7. They were all around 8 to start. And the people on the conventional diet, they improved. They did better, from 7.9 to 7.5. That's good. But the people on the vegan diet had a drop from 8.1 down to 6.8. That's enormous. That's better than any of the oral medicines that we use for diabetes. If you have a medicine that does that, that is a fantastic medicine. So we also tracked LDL cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and it drops dramatically. It drops very, very well because you're not eating cholesterol. You're not eating animal fat. So we then looked at every study that had ever been done using plant-based diets for people with type 2 diabetes. And if you are to the left of this line, if you are to the left, that means you got better. And as you can see, every single study shows the same thing. A plant-based diet, even if you're eating rice and beans and potatoes and so forth, you get better. It's a good way to go, okay? This is Vance. Vance was a policeman. Vance came into our study, and he told me about his father. He had lots of diabetes in his family. It was in his grandparents. His father was dead by age 30. Vance was 31 when he was diagnosed with diabetes. He came in to see us when he was in his late 30s, and he began this plant-based diet. And he lost 27 kilograms over about a year's time. He stopped his diabetes medications. His A1C fell from 9.5, which is terrible, to 5.3, which is completely normal. When I was in medical school, I was taught something that you might have been taught. Diabetes never goes away. Diabetes is a one-way street. Diabetes is a progressive disease. You can't get over diabetes. Once you have diabetes, you'll always have diabetes. Vance was sitting in front of me on no medication, and I was looking at his lab results, wondering, should I tell him? He doesn't have diabetes anymore. And at first I was quite nervous because there were many doctors who got angry. They said, you cannot tell a patient they don't have diabetes. Diabetes never gets better. After I started seeing this again and again and again, we got quite comfortable telling patients they no longer have diabetes. They're very happy. However, diabetes will wait around the corner for you to bring sausage and cheese back into your life. And if you do, diabetes is more than happy to come back. By the way, I asked Vance's permission to share his experience, and he said, well, make sure you tell everyone that my erectile dysfunction went away too. By the way, in case you doubt that, we see it all the time, and let me just explain it. Erectile dysfunction, or what used to be referred to as sexual impotence, is not caused by performance anxiety. It is caused in a few cases by medications, sometimes by surgery, but for most men, erectile dysfunction is caused by a lack of blood flow. The male sexual anatomy is a peculiar hydraulic system that was obviously devised on a Monday because things go wrong with it all the time. And in the same way as men who eat lots of meat and dairy products get narrowed arteries to their heart and can end up having a heart attack, or you have narrowed carotid arteries to the brain and you can have a stroke, you narrow arteries to all parts of the body. And if you don't get enough blood flow, then you're going to spend your evenings watching television. If you're on a vegan diet, there is no animal fat in it, there is no cholesterol in it, and the arteries start to very gradually open up again. And so if you have pain in your chest, it goes away, the brain gets better oxygenation, and if you are a man who has been taking pills for erectile dysfunction, you suddenly discover, I don't need them anymore. Isn't that an amazing thing? So anyway, I should stop talking about diabetes and I should start talking about sexual performance, and the whole world would go vegan overnight, I think. So it'd be a good thing. This is Nancy. This is Nancy. She did the same thing. She had diabetes. She lost 18 kilograms over about a year's time. She stopped her diabetes medications. Now, she still has diabetes, but she did much better. She's down about 1.5 points on no medication at all. But she had an interesting experience. She was home cooking spaghetti, and she had a jar of spaghetti sauce. She opened it up, she poured the jar into a pan, and she just stopped. She looked at her hands. She had arthritis. And if any of you have arthritis, you know that whoever makes those vacuum-packed jars, they are obviously sadists because you cannot open them. You struggle and struggle to get the jar open, but her pain was gone. She opened the jar very easily, and she thought, wait, when did my arthritis go away? It was about the time I changed my diet. She came running into our center and said, wait a minute, this is a diabetes study. Why is my arthritis gone? And I had to tell her that I actually wrote a book in 1998 called Foods That Fight Pain. And I did it because I saw many, many people where their rheumatoid arthritis went away. And migraines can go away, and menstrual pains can go away, many pains can go away. And yet people didn't know about this. In her case, it was dairy products, milk, cheese, yogurt. The protein causes inflammation in the joints, not for everybody, but for many people. And when that's gone, the arthritis goes away and life resumes. So it's a good idea to try. All right, let me show you my most important slide. I want to show you the cause of type 2 diabetes, all right? This is the same muscle cell, right? And up there I have glucose. The glucose is like gasoline. Gasoline powers your car. Glucose powers your cells. But the glucose cannot get into the cell without the help of insulin. The insulin hormone is like a key that attaches to these receptors, and once it attaches, it signals the glucose to come inside the cell, and there it is. It's coming in. That's normal. If you have type 2 diabetes, you have glucose, you have insulin, you have those receptors, that's totally normal. The only thing that's not normal is that black arrow. That signaling process is not working. Why? Because chicken fat, beef fat, fryer grease, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. All these fats are building up inside the cell, and it's making the cell not work anymore. So when I get the fat out of the cell, the diabetes can improve. And if I get to you soon enough, we can make it go away. Now, you might say, I never heard that before. I never heard a doctor talk about that. Well, that's because doctors didn't know about this. This was not known when I was in medical school. At Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, researchers started putting people into MR spectroscopy machines. And you can be 15 years old. You can be very thin. But if you have that fat inside your cell, you're going to develop diabetes in many cases. And now we know that. It makes old diabetes diets look ridiculous. Don't eat bread, don't eat rice, don't eat potatoes. That has nothing to do with it. All that will do is reduce the glucose, but that was never the problem. The problem is inside the cell. We have to get away from the animal fat completely, keep the oils low, be on a healthy, plant-based diet. And that's the treatment for diabetes, okay? So, intracellular lipid, we try to get rid of it. This is a major insurance company in Washington, D.C. and around the United States. And we introduced a vegan diet at Geico's insurance company because they wanted to see if it would help people lose weight or improve their diabetes. And all we did was offer vegan meals in the cafeteria, in the canteen at the work site, and have once a week a discussion group on how to stick with a vegan diet. And the employees loved it. However, the cafeteria manager was a little bit new to understanding vegan food and what he should serve and what he shouldn't serve. So it took him a little while. Anyway, it took him a while, but he eventually understood that maybe the vegan burger should not have the bacon and cheese on top. But they learned. And in a comparison site that did not get the vegan program, there was no loss of weight. But the people who got the vegan program lost weight very, very nicely. And so then we did it in 10 different cities in the United States, all of them part of the insurance company. And the people participating lost weight very nicely. If they had diabetes, they got better. So by now, it's not even controversial. Now it's very obvious that this is a way to go. In one of our Geico studies, there were 2 people who came every week. But our instructors complained about them a bit. They said, you know, I don't think they are very motivated. Because they came every week and they just talked to each other and they ignored what the instructors were trying to say. And so every week I kept hearing about Hillary and Bruce, that they were these misbehaved Geico employees. But you know what? You can misjudge people. They were talking a lot, and they were distracting the other participants. But what they were talking about was what recipes they were going to make that night, and what foods they were going to pick up at the store, how they were going to convince her parents to go vegan with them, and how they were going to have a vegan Christmas for all of their friends. And a year later, Bruce sent me this picture. They've lost an enormous amount of weight. Hillary has lost 85 pounds. Bruce has lost about 100 pounds. But there's one other thing. If you've tried dieting over and over and over again, it makes you feel dispirited. Because other people succeed, I'm not succeeding. And if that beats you up psychologically, it's not a good thing. But it was never your fault. It was the fault of the diet. And once you're on a healthy, plant-based diet, that's the diet your body was built for, and the success is automatic. And these people never exercised a day in their lives. But once they lost all that weight, they had energy, and they enjoyed exercise. And he sent me this picture the day they ran their first half marathon. We recently did a study in people with painful neuropathy. This is a late stage of diabetes, where the diabetes is attacking the nerves in the feet and in the hands. Sometimes it causes quite serious pain. And so I'm going to skip this. We brought in 34 people, and they all had painful neuropathy, and we asked them to try a vegan diet. Some of them had vegan diet plus vitamin B12. Others had the vitamin only. This was our placebo, so to speak. And what we showed is we test their nerve function with a machine called a pseudoscan. It's measuring skin conductance, which is a very good measure for fine nerve function in the hands and also in the feet. And what we showed is in the control group, it was getting worse. In the vegan group, it was getting better. Their nerves are getting healthier. Then we asked them, how do you feel? Are your symptoms improving? And here you want the scores to be lower. And in the vegan group, they dropped. In other words, their symptoms are melting away. And finally, we just asked them, what's the most important? Are you any better? And if they said no, 1, that's a 1. Almost the same, 2, 7, I am much, much better. So what we found is in the vegan group, they were around 5, meaning about, on the average, right about here. But in the control group, not so much. So the point of this is that these are not people who were diagnosed with diabetes yesterday. These are people who have had it for years and years and years and years. And I don't care how long you've had diabetes. It's a really important thing to change your diet and see how much you can improve. And what has made us really stand up and take notice is when you look at Alzheimer's disease. People who have diabetes have about double the risk of Alzheimer's disease. This was a Japanese study where they brought in a large group of people, more than 1,000. Those who had diabetes had about double the risk of developing Alzheimer's. Many other studies have shown the same. So we don't want to play around with this disease. We want to do everything we can to eradicate it. All right, by now you might be saying, okay, vegan diet, where do I get my protein? Those of you who are already vegan, I know you're tired of that question. But for those of you who are not, I want to just mention that if you're eating meat, the cow or the other animal that you might be eating was a vegan. And they got all of their protein entirely from plants. And the biggest, strongest animals, from a bull to an elephant to a giraffe to a stallion, these are all vegans and they get plenty of protein from plant sources. So protein is in beans, in grains, in vegetables. You will never be low in protein. Forget protein. As long as you're eating a normal, varied vegan diet, there's more than enough protein. Calcium without milk? Sure. Green leafy vegetables and beans have lots of absorbable calcium. Now, vitamin B12 is something that you need for healthy nerves and healthy blood, and it's made actually by bacteria, not by animals or plants. And you need only a tiny amount. Some people will say the bacteria in the soil put B12 on the plant, and that will give us some. Don't depend on that source. It's a good idea to take a vitamin B12 supplement. I encourage everyone to do that. All right? So how do I start? For some of us, we're talking about this yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, I want to just share with you how we begin a vegan diet, and we'll end there. The first step that I suggest is if this is new to you, check out the possibilities. What I mean is take a week and just think about what things have no animal products but actually taste good that I would like. So I need breakfasts, I need lunches, dinners, and snacks. And I just fill out my list. So whether it's porridge oats or blueberry pancakes or bran cereal, whatever it is, try it out and over a week experiment a bit. And that's true for lunches. If I've never had the veggie burger, now I'm going to try it, see how it is. If you like it, you write it down. And at an Italian restaurant, you'll find many, many choices. They are more than happy to make a vegan meal for you. At a Mexican restaurant, they're very happy to do the same. So the idea is I'm just checking out the possibilities at restaurants, wherever I am. Chinese restaurants, lots of it. Okay, rice dishes, tofu dishes, vegetable dishes, Japanese foods. Just try them out. All I'm doing is checking out the possibilities. And then once I know what I like, I've got some breakfasts, I've got some lunches, I've got some dinners. Now I know what foods I like that are vegan. Now, take 3 weeks and do it all vegan every day for 21 days. You can do it. And at the end of that time, what you discover is you're physically healthier, and your tastes are starting to change, and your friends are starting to turn to you with questions, and you are now the nutrition expert for everybody you know. If you have diabetes and you're taking medication for it, tell your doctor in advance that you are doing this, because this diet is very powerful. Your blood sugar can fall so quickly that if you're still taking insulin or other medicines, it can even be too low, and you'll have symptoms of hypoglycemia. So it's good to do the diet, but have your doctor there so you can say, all right, here's where my blood sugar is now, and your doctor will bring you off your medicines at the right time. Don't throw your medicines away. Don't cancel your doctor's appointment. Just be in touch with your doctor as you begin this treatment. Many, many people get off their medicines completely or get on a lot less medicine. Let me encourage you to try our Kickstart program. It's an online program that is free. You just go to pcrm.org. Write this down, pcrm.org. And every month we start again. In May, we're going to begin, and every day you'll get an email with menus and recipes and cooking videos, all for free. We have a free app as well that you can use. It's all at pcrm.org. That's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It's in English, it's in Spanish, and I'd encourage you to do the Mandarin one for an extra intellectual challenge. We also have one for people from India and a new Japanese program that we just started. And let me invite all of you to please join us in Washington, D.C., July 29th and 30th, when our weather is at its most sweltering. We would love to have you come. For 2 days, we're having our international conference on nutrition in medicine for doctors, nurses, dietitians, or anybody who wants to come. It'll be a huge crowd, and it will change your life. And let me brag for a minute about my book about diabetes, which is now being translated into German. And also, let me say a word for my friend Michael Greger, who has a wonderful book called How Not to Die, which is my favorite thing to do. And I think you'll enjoy it too. So, the last thing that I just want to say is you will hear people say that this is not going to work. No, nobody will change their diet. But you know what? People are changing. And they're changing for several reasons. When I talk with a 16-year-old, they are changing their diets not because they are worried about diabetes, but because they have a heart for animals. And what you have heard and seen that happens on farms is every bit as bad as you have been told. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and my family was a cattle ranching family. I shot animals myself. I brought them to slaughter myself. And once I started looking at this from a health standpoint, I started thinking, why did those animals all have to go through that? Maybe I would have been doing a bit better to raise asparagus all this time. The second reason people are changing is because they are environmentalists. And the effects of food changes on the earth are every bit as bad as you have heard reported. And finally, people are changing for reasons of their health or of their family's health. And the power of nutrition for health is every bit as strong as you have heard. We are used to this idea that food is a very small thing. You can be on a diet, but you'll never stick with it. It won't really work. You can try to change your cholesterol level with a diet change, but it won't work much. You'll need medicines. Those were not very good diets. When you get the meat products and the animal products off your plate, and you're eating healthy vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans, and you're enjoying these foods and you're having fun with them, and you're finding healthy new products at the store, new websites and new books and new recipes, and when we share it around and we have fun as a family or as a workplace or as a community, we're taking power into our hands that we never had before, and that changes the world that we live in. And my goal is to make every doctor unemployed. And I hope that you will join me in that battle. Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me share this time with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. May I take some questions? Is that all right? Okay. Now, we might be a little over time. Do I have time for questions? Okay.